There is growing concern this morning in many cities about a rise in violent crime. Nationally, homicide rates increased by 24% at the beginning of this year compared with the prior year, and that includes larger cities like New York and Chicago and smaller cities like Omaha and Louisville. Addressing rising crime was a key focus for Bill Bratton, the former head of the Boston, Los Angeles, and New York City police departments, and he's out with a new book on the changing face of policing and the reforms that he put in place. It's called The Profession, a memoir of community, race, and the arc of policing in America. And we should mention, we're happy to mention that Mr. Bratton is married to CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman. Commissioner, good morning to you.
Great to be here with you. Great to be here.
It's really great to have you here.
Terrific to have you at the table. Unfortunate to have you at the table at a time when we've got crime rates going up in many big cities. You oversaw historic declines in multiple cities. What would you do now?
Well, the timing of the book is perfect in that respect because basically it's a tutorial. What worked, what didn't work over the last 50 years. And we're in the midst of a crime crisis once again as we're coming away from the coronavirus crisis. And we don't have to reinvent. There's lessons that have been learned that can address not only crime, but also the parallel race relations, that we can do both at the same time. We must.
So, I mean, on that question, systemic racism in policing comes up constantly at this table. All across the country, people are talking about it. Is it present in policing? Your answer is yes, but. What's the but?
Yes, but in that it's not present everywhere, fortunately. It's like our society, that systemic racism is present in almost every element of our society, our country.
I appreciate you even mentioning that it's present. Most people your stature don't even acknowledge that it exists.
How do you deny our history? In history that we're still living out today with some of the politics of today. The voter suppression is basically, a lot of that is based on systemic racism, really is.
You detail in one of the most powerful chapters in the book the implicit bias training that NYPD officers go through, and it is truly impressive stuff. And yet you look at the record in the city, and there's been more than $1 billion in payouts and settlements in line-of-duty deaths where officers killed a suspect. What do you make of that discrepancy?
Thank you for raising that. We spent a lot of money putting all 36,000 officers through 4 days of training to make them aware of implicit bias. But to actually do something about it requires training. And a major focus of the book is that we need to refund police, not defund. That we're going to need a lot more money to retrain, to deal with bias, to deal with the homeless, to deal with the emotionally disturbed.
Commissioner, one of the biggest sticking points on federal police reform is what's called qualified immunity and holding officers accountable. What changes would you support to qualified immunity?
More importantly, I think the police profession, police leadership are willing to support some changes in qualified immunity. You can't do away with it, that it is so critically important to the morale of officers, but also in some respects to their livelihood. But it can be reformed. Two key words dealing with qualified immunity. It's one, that the action has to be lawful, and two, that the officers have to basically be aware that what they're doing is what a reasonable person would do. It's a very misunderstood term and concept, and I'm glad it's out there being discussed.
Yeah, I am too. I like that you said implicit bias is not a human issue, not a law enforcement issue. But I think, to follow up on Anthony's point, most people, certainly people of color, are upset because it doesn't seem that police are held accountable. Most times in these situations, you're meeting people on your worst possible day. The officers will say, well, don't resist, just do what we say. They're trained to maintain authority. We've got to figure out a way to see each other in this time, and we don't do that.
That's sweet Alice Harris, to see each other. The good news about this is that we have been reforming. I talk about that in the book, that we've been reforming for 50 years. So we have more accountability than we did. We have better training than we did. But
isn't that the issue, or do you think the issue is better training, de-escalation in particular? They're the professionals.
Oh, I think the training is the key. To build trust, and it's essential to build trust, you're going to have better training, better accountability, better transparency. And we now have capabilities there with the cameras that they're all carrying. No, this is an inflection point, and let's not get it wrong this time, as we've gotten so much wrong in the past. I'm very excited about the opportunities out of the crisis of the moment.
Well, you wanted to be a cop since you were a toddler out there directing traffic. Bought your first cop book at 11. You said you love cops, love being a cop, but you know there's work to do.
I know the flaws.
Yeah. And the book is dedicated to 22,000 officers who have died in the line of duty. You say those cops count, police matter. And if people are interested in the police perspective, this certainly gives it to them.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner, thank you very much. The book is The Profession, and it goes on sale tomorrow.